Guilty of the crime of conspiracy to commit murder.
Defendant is guilty of first-degree murder. Mrs. Adelson, control yourself.
Despite looking sweet and innocent on the outside, some wives have gone through unbelievably evil paths to end their marriages early, usually ending with them having to spend the rest of their lives in prison. From ritualistic sacrifices to brutal executions, these are evil ex-wives' reactions to life sentences, starting with one of the most disturbing cases of recent years, with a wife who not only hid her crimes, but also went on national television to profit from it. This is Kouri Richins, a mother and author from Utah who was convicted of the murder of her own husband, Eric, after an entire year of lying about it. In March 2022, paramedics arrived at their house following a distress call to find the husband lying on his bedroom floor after suffering from a fentanyl overdose. Despite their best efforts, he had ingested 5 times the lethal dose and died before reaching the hospital.
What's your first name? What's your first name? Yeah, let me talk to you out here for a second. Let them do their work in there. So what happened today?
He's gonna be okay, right? Like I got in bed and then I just got.
Yeah, they're doing their best, okay, ma'am? Here, you can use my phone.
It was a devastating scene for the whole family, especially for their 3 children. She went on to write a book titled, Are You With Me?, to help them cope with the grief of having lost their father, and was even invited to several local TV shows to promote it.
Joining us now is author of Are You With Me?, Kouri Richins, to share her 3 C's to helping kids cope with grief. And Kouri, I want to start with your story. What happened in your personal life?
So my husband passed away unexpectedly last year. So it's March 4th was a 1-year anniversary for us, and he was 39. It completely took us all by shock. And we have 3 little boys, 10, 9, and 6. And you know, my kids and I kind of wrote this book on the different emotions and grieving processes that we've experienced last year, and, you know, hoping that it can kind of help other kids, you know, deal with this and kind of, you know, find happiness some way or another.
It wasn't until a year later, in May 2023, that police would discover Richins had purchased the drugs used to poison her husband a few days earlier. As for her motive, Richins had recently started a house flipping business, which came crashing down after she had accumulated nearly $2 million in debt. So she saw the opportunity to paint him out of the picture to access his $4 million estate and life insurance before setting up a new life with her lover. On the day of the murder, she had told her husband she had successfully closed a deal for one of the houses she had flipped and handed him a laced cocktail to celebrate. According to reports, she had also tried poisoning him a month prior using a sandwich laced with fentanyl. She was charged with almost 3 dozen counts, including aggravated murder, insurance fraud, and forgery. The trial was heavily televised, and she adamantly maintained her innocence, claiming it was all lies against her.
As much as you've been influenced into thinking that Dad was murdered, that I took your dad from you, that is completely wrong and an absolute lie. And the thought of that is still as absurd today as it was 4 years ago. And just because someone may not be perfect, that's a far reach for them to be capable of murder, to kill someone.
However, the children gave much darker statements against her.
After my dad died, Kouri would put us in the basement while she was with the neighbor. I felt scared because I thought something really bad was happening again. She would take me to places that smelled really bad. Everything she did made me feel uncomfortable. When someone talks about Kouri, it makes me feel hateful and ashamed. She took away my dad. I can't ever see my dad again. I want her to go to prison forever. If she got out, I would be so scared, really mad, and I wouldn't want to go with her anywhere.
You made me paranoid about sleeping on my dad's side of the bed by saying I might die or get harmed when I was just trying to be close to my dad after you killed him. You took away everything from me and my brothers.
I want the judge to know I hope Kouri gets convicted to a life sentence. Kouri is always drunk. I want the judge to know my dad was a good person and I miss my dad. I miss my dad, but I do not miss how my life used to be. I don't miss Kouri, I will tell you that.
Despite all her attempts, the judge was more interested in what the children had to say and issued the maximum sentence possible.
And who causes the absolute tragedy that has befallen Erika Richins' sons and family. A person convicted of those things is simply too dangerous to ever be free. Accordingly, Ms. Richins, based on your conviction on count 1, first-degree felony aggravated murder, the court hereby sentences you to life without parole. You have the right to an appeal. You must file a notice of appeal within 30 days. You have the right to be represented by counsel on appeal.
She has been serving her life sentence in Utah State Correctional Facility in Salt Lake City since May 2026. On top of this, the state of Utah is actively pursuing almost $1.4 million in restitution against Richins after she successfully collected payouts from his life insurance between his death and the moment she was finally arrested. But a far greater evil was involved with this next ex-wife sentence because she went straight for her children. Everyone thought Lori Vallow was the perfect woman, hardworking, loving, and held deep ties with the Mormon Church. So it was a complete shock when she was involved in the events that would tear her family apart. Following 3 failed marriages, Lori thought she found the one after marrying Charles, with whom she had an adopted son named JJ. However, things took a disturbing turn when she met religious radical Chad Daybell. They both shared the same twisted beliefs of an imminent doomsday, and that only a few people would be saved, with the rest becoming some sort of zombies. So they started a cult, recruiting her brother, Alex Cox. Her husband tried to get police involved, but she was already too far gone.
I can't get in touch with my kids.
How old are your kids?
6.5 and 16. Okay.
How long have you been trying?
2 days.
Okay.
But she lost her mind. I don't know how else to say it. We're LDS. She thinks she's a resurrected being and a God and member of the 144,000. She's come. Jesus is coming next year. She took all the money out of her bank account today. My truck has gone from the airport. She went to the airport and got it. I just flew in from Houston, from Dallas, Houston and Dallas. So
where's your truck?
I don't know.
So what makes her a danger to herself and to others?
She threatened me, murder me, kill me.
She threatened to murder you?
Yes. And she said,
how did she do that?
My bishop right there is in the car. He was on the phone with me today when she said, "I will have you destroyed," is what she said there.
Okay, that's not a threat to kill you.
Yesterday was a threat to kill me. The day before,
what did she say yesterday?
She said, "You're not Charles. I don't know who you are, what you did with Charles, but I can murder you now with my powers."
And when he tried to take matters into his own hands, he got into a fight with Vallow's brother, which ended with the husband losing his life. In the span of the next few months, Vallow's 2 children mysteriously disappeared, and Daybell's current wife, Tammy, died from asphyxiation in their home. Instead of grieving their losses, the 2 got married almost immediately and fled to Hawaii, where they were arrested and brought back to the mainland for their respective convictions. Vallow was charged on 2 counts of first-degree murder for the death of her children after their remains were found within the Daybell residence, 2 counts of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder for her involvement in the murder of their spouses, and grand theft. When it was time to face the consequences of her actions, she decided to represent herself, and it went as well as you could expect.
The defendant opens the door and tries to advise that she is a good person, a peaceful person, a kind person, a loving person, any of those other types of things that we believe that would allow us under 405 to then bring in specific acts such as the murder of her children, her husband, and her current husband's wife.
All right.
Which would also be 404B that they withdrew. No, it'd be 405.
Yeah, they withdrew it, but if you bring up 404 that you...
Then all 404B is in, or do we get a hearing on what 404B can come in? If I open the door, do I get a hearing? We stop trial and I get a hearing on...
Stop. We'll have a very short hearing, okay? If you're going to introduce how you have great character and good character, we're going to have a short hearing on what evidence that they can bring in to rebut that character, which could include being convicted of 4 murders. So
and would you
talk to your advisory counsel during the break. And
you don't need to yell at me either.
I'm at you, okay?
Yeah, you are, and you do not need to talk to me that way. I'm very courteous. I'm very courteous to you.
After a 6-week trial, she was found guilty of all charges and was later given multiple life sentences without the possibility of parole.
The court orders you to be sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after serving 25 calendar years. This sentence would run consecutively to the District Court of the 7th Judicial District of the State of Idaho in Fremont County, case number CR 22-21-1624. As to count 1 in CR 001-242-001-242-001, it's ordered that you be sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after serving 25 calendar years. That sentence also, due to the number of victims you've created in the 2 cases, the immeasurable harm you've inflicted on many, it's ordered that that run consecutive.
Even after the sentence, Vallow has adamantly denied any guilt in the murders in several interviews.
Did you ever think you'd have the title of convicted serial killer?
No, do I?
Well, for people.
I mean, I guess you could technically say that, but everyone in the world knows that I didn't hurt anyone. I've never hurt anyone in my whole entire life.
As for Daybell, he received the same charges, as well as 3 counts of insurance fraud for benefiting from $430,000 in life insurance policies after his wife's death. He would be found guilty on all counts, and a jury unanimously determined he should receive the death penalty. A 15-year sentence was also delivered for the insurance fraud charges. Not all ex-wives are as heartless when it comes to reacting to their sentences, as this next one knew she would never get out of prison. The woman in question is Diana Lovejoy, a former technical writer and fitness enthusiast from Southern California who was convicted of orchestrating a botched murder-for-hire plot against her then-husband, Greg Mulvihill. The couple was going through a messy divorce, which reached a point where her husband was seeking a $120,000 settlement, as well as full custody of their young son. In her mind, she had to do whatever it took to prevent all of this, and she took to her shooting instructor and current lover, a man by the name of Weldon McDavid Jr., to carry out her orders. The plan was simple: lure him to a secluded area with an excuse that someone had important information against his wife, ambush him from a distance, and leave before anyone would take notice. However, they didn't expect that he would arrive at the spot with a co-worker who was able to spot Weldon hiding in some nearby bushes, giving the husband enough time to run away after being struck in the torso. After a short investigation, both Lovejoy and McDavid were arrested for attempted murder. Lovejoy was charged with conspiracy to commit murder, as well as attempted murder. McDavid was also charged with being the perpetrator, adding a count of intentionally discharging a firearm. When it was time for the verdict to be delivered on her and McDavid, Lovejoy finally felt the weight of her actions fall like a ton of bricks.
In the Superior Court of the State of California, in and for the County of San Diego, the people of the State of California versus Weldon K. McDavid, defendant. Case number SCN 363925, DA number OCD 980. Verdict. We, the jury, in the above entitled cause, find the defendant, Weldon K. McDavid, guilty of the crime of conspiracy to commit murder.
All right, we're going to need to take a break. You're down. And if we could have, the jury go back into the jury.
She had to be taken to the hospital for further treatment after fainting, but that only delayed the inevitable. A few months later, she was sentenced to 26 years to life for her direct involvement in the plot. She was also ordered to pay a total of $500,000 in damages to her ex-husband. McDavid, on the other hand, was sentenced to a total of 50 years to life for being the direct perpetrator, virtually turning into life in prison. They say that a mother's love knows no boundaries, but this next case involves a woman who went way too far to protect her daughter from a messy divorce. It all started with Wendi Adelson, an attorney from South Florida, who married Florida State University professor Dan Markell in 2006. The two lived a seemingly happy life and even shared 2 children. However, it didn't take long before the marriage took a turn for the worse, leading to a highly contentious divorce and custody battle in 2013. With the judge denying Wendi's request to relocate their 2 sons from Tallahassee back to South Florida, her mother, Donna Adelson, jumped into action to make sure the husband stopped being a problem. With the help of her son Charlie and his girlfriend Catherine, she hired 2 hitmen to follow the husband to his home, where they would ambush him inside his garage and deliver the fatal blow.
When FSU professor Dan Markell was found shot in his garage.
He's still alive. He's moving.
A neighbor called 911 after hearing gunshots and raced over. He said Markell had a gunshot wound to the head and was still in his car.
The driver's side window is all bashed in, and he's got blood all over his head.
Sources tell the Tallahassee Democrat newspaper that there may be several other suspects on the run and that this may have been a case of murder for hire.
After a lengthy investigation, everyone involved in the plot was convicted by 2023, with Adelson being treated as the mastermind behind it all. She was arrested by the FBI at the Miami International Airport as she was about to board a one-way flight to Vietnam with her husband.
How are you? You have an ID? Cell phone? No, I don't want to give it to you. Why do I have to? Because my attorney said not to. Why do I have to give it to you? This is evidence. Evidence. She's under arrest. I have to go with you. I have to go. I have to go. You don't have that choice. Let me help you out. No, I have to stay. Please don't do this. Don't stay. You need to grab the bags.
Adelson was promptly charged with first-degree murder, as well as conspiracy and solicitation to commit first-degree murder. Despite her initial sense of entitlement after being caught, she still had a fitting reaction when she was found guilty on all charges.
We, the jury, find as follows as to count 1 of the indictment, first-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder. Mrs. Adelson, control yourself. Count 2. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 2 of the indictment. Conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Count 3. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 3 of the indictment. Solicitation to commit first-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of solicitation to commit first-degree murder.
At least she'll have all the time in the world to think about what she did while in prison.
By sentence to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole or release pursuant to sections 782.04 and 775.082 sub 1 sub a Florida statutes. On count 2 of the indictment, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, you are hereby sentenced to 30 years in the Department of Corrections that will run consecutive to count 1. Court will also sentence you to 30 years in the Department of Corrections on count 3. Counts 2 and 3 are to run concurrent with each other, but consecutive to count 1.
The same sentence was given to both her son and his girlfriend for their direct involvement in the plot, with all of them maintaining their innocence up until the very end.
Just like to say that I maintained my innocence.
Count 1, which is the count of first-degree murder, you have been found guilty by a jury. You will be adjudicated guilty, and you will be sentenced to life in prison with no eligibility for probation or parole.
As for the victim's wife, she managed to avoid any charges in relation to the murder, despite her combative stance during her testimony on all 3 separate trials.
The state decides to arrest you later on.
The state isn't going to decide to arrest me.
Do you know if they consider you a suspect?
I don't know.
Now, the life insurance policy that the state was asking you about, have you received any money from the life insurance policy from Mr. Markell?
I don't know if maybe in the beginning the life insurance that Danny owed me about $100,000 when he died. I do think that his family made that disbursement. I don't know if they paid that through the life insurance policy, but other than that, there's been, the life insurance policy is money put away for the kids. I've never seen it.
Do you have access to that, or you have no control over that?
I have no control over that.
All right.
Adelson is currently housed at the Homestead Correctional Institution in Miami-Dade County and is currently pursuing an appeal to her conviction, despite murder reversals being extremely rare in the state of Florida. As for this next girl, she claimed to have taken drastic measures to escape from an abusive relationship, but it all came crashing down once the truth was uncovered. In late 2020, social media influencer and adult industry model Courtney Clenney started dating cryptocurrency analyst Christian Obumseli. Truly, a match made in modern times. Despite hitting it off at first, the couple ran into an endless pit of toxicity, spanning from Clenney's possessive behavior and constant abuse against him.
I didn't go to talk to Oro. I was going on a bike ride. Like, what the? Get off of me! Me going to talk to Oro? Is this gonna make you act like this? You literally talked to her without telling me! Courtney, I was on a bike ride and she passed me and I said, hi, you and Courtney are having a live chat. My bad, I forgot to tell you that. That doesn't make you to act and call me a
By 2022, the abuse became physical, with some of their fights being recorded by the security cameras from the building they were staying at.
2022 incident a month after the couple moved into the building. So let's play that video if we could now. If you look at either screen, you will now see the video.
Things would reach a point of no return a few months later, when emergency operators received a chilling call from Clenney following a domestic dispute that ended with her boyfriend being stabbed in the chest.
I can't feel my arm. Ma'am, my boyfriend is dying of a stab. Ma'am, what is the address? What's the address, baby? 3131 Northeast 7th Ave. Please, God, please.
When police and paramedics arrived, he was in critical condition and she was covered in his blood.
Is he dead? Is he dead?
Sit down.
Okay, no, I'll sit down. I just, you scared me.
Sit down.
He's not dead, is he?
We don't. No, they're taking him to the hospital right now. He's in the hospital right now.
I need to be at the hospital with him.
Oh, you're not going anywhere.
Why?
Because we're conducting an investigation.
It was self-defense. I mean, my mom was on the phone.
You're okay. Well, listen, the detectives are coming. You're gonna talk to them, and then you're gonna explain your side.
But I'm gonna be covered in blood. I look crazy. I was holding him while he was spurting blood, trying to stop the blood.
He was then rushed to the nearest hospital, but died on the way there. Once in the precinct, she gave a more detailed recount of the facts, claiming that he was being violent towards her, and she had no other choice than to grab the knife.
Pressing me, he ended up pinning me against the wall, and then I said choking me on the floor. It's just they were looking at my neck, and I was like, I'm not saying choking me but he had my neck. And this happened twice before, where I couldn't breathe and I was on the floor. Yeah. I could not breathe, and I don't think that he's trying to kill me, but I was scared, and all 3 times I have been scared. So I grabbed my knife and I said, don't come anywhere closer to me. I had absolutely no intention of using it. I'm on the phone with my mom, and he's coming at me like he's gonna grab either the phone or the knife or something. And so I was just don't come any closer.
Due to inconsistencies in her story and a lack of sufficient evidence to prove she was attacked, Clenney was arrested and charged with 1 count of second-degree murder with a deadly weapon. It took 4 years of trials and constant deliberation for a verdict to be reached, with Clenney pleading guilty to manslaughter in August 2026. And after her defense team managed to negotiate a plea deal with the Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office, as well as getting the approval from the boyfriend's family, she got a sentence that surprised everyone.
Turn to page 3 of 8 to the charge of manslaughter with a deadly weapon. I'm sentencing you to 6 years in the state prison with all applicable credit for time served, followed by 5 years of reporting probation.
Not only did she only get 6 years, but she also got credit for the 4 years she spent in jail throughout the trial process, meaning she only needs to spend 2 years in prison before being released. This was most likely accepted by the victim's family to finally put the matter to rest and finally be able to point a finger at the killer after 4 grueling years. Although we all know that she should have gotten life without parole. However, what this next woman did to her ex-husband was no accident. It was an act of pure evil. Back in 2015, Erika Sandoval decided to get revenge on her ex-husband in one of the most disturbing ways imaginable. She had already divorced former Exeter police officer Daniel Green 2 years prior. However, there were still some conflicting feelings, and when he posted a picture with a much younger girlfriend, she decided to jump into action. Sandoval broke into her husband's house while he was in the bathroom, shot him multiple times, and tried to stage the scene to look like a robbery gone wrong. The body was discovered later that day by a fellow officer after he failed to show up for his shift, and Sandoval was arrested the next day. It took almost 10 years of investigation and multiple trials for a verdict to finally be reached, mainly because Sandoval kept giving different stories about that day, including one scenario where she was at the house to get some of her son's belongings when another man broke in and shot him. She then claimed she acted in self-defense due to a history of abuse. However, her shifting testimony just made her look less and less credible.
I don't want to take the blame for this. I don't want what's happening to happen.
When Sandoval was arrested in 2015, she told police she killed Green to get full custody of their son. But shortly after that, in a recorded interview with police, she took it back. She told police she broke into Green's home on February 6, 2015 to get some of her son's clothes. And when she got there, another man was inside.
He had pulled me up and told me to grab the bag, and he pushed me over to walk towards Aiden's room.
She said he was actually the one who shot Green.
The person doesn't exist, and you're making this up?
Police never found any evidence of another person at the home.
You are not telling us the truth, Erika. This is the most ridiculous lie I have ever heard, and you are going to go in front of a jury with that?
Now, the defense team admits she did it, but they say she was driven to the act by Green's abuse.
Finally, in May 2025, she would finally be found guilty of the murder charges and was sentenced a month later, accompanied by heartfelt statements from the husband's family, including his twin brother.
He was murdered by Erika for the most repulsive and repugnant of reasons. Her narcissistic and short-sighted decisions will affect us for the rest of our lives.
Strong and emotional impact statements were read aloud by Daniel Green's twin brother, sister, and family members, detailing the grief and heartache they've experienced since he was murdered 10 years ago. Thursday morning, Tulare County Judge Juliette Bacone sentenced Erika Sandoval to 50 years to life for first-degree murder.
Despite the sentence, she might be eligible for early parole under a California parole law, which states that if the inmate does not have a prior strike and has served 20 years, they will be eligible for a hearing when they turn 50 years old. Since she had already served 10 years in custody, awaiting her final conviction, she will be eligible for parole in 2037. Now, there's a point where self-defense turns into a savage attack, and this next woman took it to an unimaginable level. It's January 13th, 2003, and Texas native Susan Wright would be the perpetrator of one of the most gruesome marital homicides in modern times. She lured her then-husband, Jeffrey, to their bedroom, where she tied him up to the bed frame with neckties. At first, he thought it would be an unusual, intimate encounter, but his excitement quickly vanished when she took out a knife and lunged at him. Wright didn't strike once or twice, but a total of 193 times against her defenseless spouse. After letting it all out of her system, she carried him to the backyard and buried him in a shallow grave and attempted to cover up the crime scene by painting the bedroom. The next day, she filed a false domestic abuse report to get a restraining order against him. She confessed the murder to her attorney the following week and promptly turned herself in, leading to a first-degree murder charge and a trial that would be followed by the entire nation.
27-year-old Susan Wright and her attorneys are hoping the jurors will be understanding of the battered wife syndrome. The defense claims Susan was kicked, punched, and emotionally abused, and that she feared for her life and the lives of the couple's two young children on the night she admits stabbing her husband Jeffrey Wright nearly 200 times at their home in Northwest Harris County, then partially burying his body in the back patio area.
The defense team tried pushing the narrative of self-defense, claiming that Wright was constantly abused and terrorized by Jeffrey.
Defense attorney Neil Davis sat down with us tonight to tell us Susan Wright was driven to stab her husband Jeffrey in self-defense.
Whereas the prosecution presented the case of her desire to access his life insurance policy, as well as to avoid an upcoming divorce. What Wright didn't expect was that she had to relive the crime all over again, and the prosecution brought in the same bed Jeffrey died in, still covered in bloodstains, to reenact the murder in detail.
This is State's Exhibit 56. Just the sight of the couple's bed brought tears to the eyes of Jeff Wright's dad. Despite objections by the defense, the blood-stained mattress was allowed into evidence, but the state was just getting started. As Susan Wright looked on, the prosecution, using a co-worker, reenacted the night Susan Wright tied her husband Jeff to the bed with neckties and stabbed him nearly 200 times. Susan Wright could barely contain her emotions as the detective and the demonstration continued. There were more objections, but to no avail.
And after a few more months of deliberation, she was found guilty and sentenced to 25 years in prison.
Assessor punishment at confinement in the Institutional Division of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice for 25 years.
Despite the defense's attempts to paint her like the victim, the jury made it clear they didn't believe any of her stories.
I personally did not find her credible. There was too many holes in her story.
For me, the biggest factor was the ligatures, how these ligatures affected whether he was tied down or not, and they were tied in a way that I couldn't overcome that.
9 members of the jury that found Susan Wright guilty of murder took turns telling reporters how they agreed upon the punishment of 25 years in prison.
The way we arrived at the 25 years was just a systematic discussion round table, and we ironed out our differences. We made compromises, which is what is expected.
Not only has the case been thoroughly documented, but a primetime movie titled Blue-Eyed Butcher was released in 2012 to depict a more theatrical version of her life. She ended up serving only 16 years in prison and was released in 2020 upon being granted parole.
Susan Wright is home.
Certainly. Is there anything that y'all would want to say?
No, ma'am. I would just like privacy. Please respect that.
Wright asked for privacy just as she arrived, some 3 hours after her release this morning from Gatesville Women's Facility. Wright was granted parole in July.
However, she didn't stay out of trouble for long, as in 2026, Wright was arrested once more for a hit-and-run incident while she was still under parole supervision.
Yeah, deputies say she admitted to her role in that hit-and-run crash and told them she didn't call 911 because of her past experiences with law enforcement. Records show she was booked into jail yesterday morning and released last night.
Given her past run-ins with the law, it's no wonder she didn't want to be in the spotlight for this one, but at least it didn't end in bloodshed once again. As for this next wife, she did everything she could to keep her evil deeds hidden, but a single mistake got her a lifetime in prison. Sarah Hartsfield is a retired U.S. Army sergeant with a lengthy marital history. In the span of 30 years, she married a total of 5 times and shares 4 children with her third husband. After so many romantic failures, she wasn't going to let the 5th husband walk away so easily and did the unthinkable to prevent it. In January 2023, Hartsfield intentionally administered a fatal dose of insulin to her diabetic husband before calling 911 and claiming that she had just found him lying unresponsive on the floor. However, her cover-up didn't last for long, as activity from her phone minutes before making the call indicates that she was actively browsing through social media and even set herself as her husband's Apple legacy contact to secure his digital assets upon his death. Her behavior during an initial interrogation was put into question as she showed herself defensive at times while questioned by a deputy.
Interviewing Sarah Hartsfield in a room there at the hospital, she got extremely emotional at times and told the deputy she gave Joe 2 insulin pens at his request the night before. She also claimed that she'd been in and out of sleep, but heard Joseph getting up to use the bathroom. She also heard alerts from his glucose monitor about that low sugar. He died of an insulin overdose, and she told the deputy during that interview you're seeing that she felt guilty she didn't do more to help him. During that video, she also asked the deputy at least twice what his role was in everything. The deputy testified at one point during the investigation while they were at the home with Sarah Hartsfield looking through everything. She actually joked with law enforcement and seemed pretty calm compared to the rest of Joe's family.
She was arrested and charged with a single count of first-degree murder. During the investigation, it was also brought to light that this wasn't Hartsfield's first offense against a significant other. In May 2018, she was involved in a violent altercation with her fiancé David Bragg, which concluded with Hartsfield fatally shooting him. She didn't face any charges, as it was determined she acted in self-defense. She was also tied to planning a murder-for-hire plot against his third husband's current wife, in an attempt to keep him from seeking custody. As a final descriptor of her true nature, her 4 children testified against her, and they all mentioned her previous violent behavior.
Sarah's daughter Hannah testified about the Minnesota shooting of Sarah's ex. She told cops that Sarah went in with 1 gun but came running to the car to get another gun, then went inside and ended up killing David Bragg. She said her mom wanted her to change her story to police and tell them she only went inside that house for clothes. Hannah also talked about a murder plot which she learned about from one of Sarah's other ex-husbands, which targeted her dad's new wife. She said her mom, Sarah, would not let that ex back in the house until he took care of what Sarah wanted done. The kids saying sometimes their mother would not let them talk to each other.
Finally, after only 9 days of trial, she was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Jury, having found the defendant guilty of murder, assessed her punishment at confinement in the institutional division of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice for life, and in addition to such confinement, assess a fine in the amount of $10,000.
Thank you, Ms. Henry. Ms. Hartsfield, you can have a seat. Does anyone want me to poll the jury?
No, you don't.
She's currently housed at the Maximum Security Mountain View Unit in Gatesville, Texas, and has an active appeal request. I just hope a woman that evil isn't shown the mercy she didn't show towards her husband. In a twist of events, this next husband was able to actually defend himself as his evil ex-wife tried to destroy his life.
And I don't think one day in jail is ever going to stop her from doing this to someone else.
Jennifer and Nicholas Plumhoff had just gone through a messy divorce when she came up with a devastating plan to get revenge. She engaged in a multi-week scheme to sabotage him by getting in contact with a jail inmate to arrange for illegal drugs to be planted on him, taking advantage of his history with substance abuse. She intended that his arrest would lead to his career being ruined and set him back immensely in his own track to recovery. However, Plumhoff's plan didn't quite pan out, and she had to face the consequences of her actions as her ex-husband gave a devastating impact statement to make his case.
And made one bad decision. She did this for weeks and weeks. I've read the messages. And for her to say the only thing he cares about is this job at the recovery center, and I want to take it from him. I worked so hard to get away from my background, to have a job where I could help people and make a difference and not be another statistic. You know, I could see her saying it, but weeks and weeks of pushing it, messaging him, well, she was at my house. Now's the time to do it. I know where his car's at now. Like, I know what it's like to need to get incarcerated. If I wouldn't have went to prison, I wouldn't be where I am. I wouldn't have taken the time to get the help that I needed, you know? And I don't think one day in jail is ever going to stop her from doing this to someone else.
Luckily for him, the judge was on his side and delivered a well-deserved sentence.
To be the sentence of the court that this defendant served 120 days in the Vallow County Jail. I'll give her credit for the 1 day that she served so far. I'm going to place her on probation for 2 years. I can't think of anything more vile than what you try to do to that man. Number one, you know, he knew his history with addictions, and to try and use that against him. Number two, trying to prevent him from helping other people, trying to engage some other inmate to ruin this man's life. And he's right. If you had any idea how many people come in here with possession of drugs and say, they weren't mine, somebody planted on me, everybody, the police, prosecutor, the court, we all go, yeah, right. People just don't plant drugs on other people.
Who knows what would have happened to him had the messages not been discovered. At least now, he'll have the satisfaction of seeing her pay for her actions. You could never suspect a devoted wife and loving mother would be capable of committing such horrific crimes, at least not until it's too late. So it's a good thing most of the women on this list will never be able to set foot outside jail again. If you want to see more courtroom cases, one defendant turned the courtroom into a WWE match, and an inmate had to be stopped in his tracks before he caused any damage. So hit the like button, subscribe, and click this video to see when criminals attack judges in court.